Good evening, good morning, good day, wherever you are in the world. And thank you so much for joining another Home in Italy live stream, live here from beautiful Abruzzo. My name is David Benton, and together with my wife, Silvana, we've been helping overseas buyers, should I say, buy, restore, and relocate to beautiful Italy. And hopefully we're going to be helping you guys as well do exactly the same. Great to see. I'm trying to see how many people's on. I can actually see how many people are joining us tonight, so that's always a little bit of a help for me, because it's a little bit strange talking to a little camera and thinking, I hope somebody's there and not just sort of me talking to Tony who's in the background. But there you go. So great. Thank you so much for joining us. I can see some people are in from YouTube by the looks. No, sorry, not YouTube. I think it's Facebook people, I think. But anyway, if you let us know where you are in the world, type something in the comments boxes. Let's see where everybody is. Let's make sure that the box is open. So remember, tonight is an open session. It's a slight change of plan to what I said last week, because I was going to do tonight's program about buying remotely, but unfortunately I'm saying unfortunately, it's been a good business trip down into Puglia, and a little bit late sort of getting back, so I thought we'd have an open session, which just makes it a little bit, I'm saying a little bit easier for me, but Tony does like to put a few questions through that is extremely difficult for me to answer, but I will put myself on the line with no problem at all. So I can see people now from YouTube. I think it's just Facebook, I think, is possibly a little bit, oh no, we've got people from YouTube, from Facebook as well, so absolutely fantastic. So as I said, tonight is an open session where you can pretty much ask anything you like, to a certain extent, about buying, restoring, and living out here in Abruzzo. So I do have a number of questions that people have sent me by email, so I will go through that as well. What I will say is, once we start these sessions, if possible, although I do like some of the funny comments that come up, that kind of thing, but if we can try and keep comments to questions, that would be fantastic, because poor Tony looks at all the questions coming through and he's got no idea what he's looking at and just tries to grab a few and put them out onto the screen. The other thing that I would like to say as well, if there are questions for your personal, not personal experiences, but let's say personal problems, or there's something that you're going through at the minute you want to ask me, I don't mind answering questions, but what I will say, I can't get into anything legal. Last time we did an open session, we had a chap on that was obviously a little bit annoyed with somebody who was dealing with over here in Italy, not us, just to put that out there, and obviously he was asking me a few questions that touching sort of legal side, and I don't like to go down that line where possible. So try and ask general questions, something that you think will help everybody that is listening. Okay, so I'm going to tell you, if you bear with me 1 second, what the plan is for April. Obviously we've got Easter coming up, which is a bit of time off, isn't it, for everybody? So let's let you know what is going off next week. So next Thursday, I will say during this month, because we have a few things that's going off in personal life as well as business life, some of the days may change. Obviously, I will let you know. I am trying to stick to Thursdays, even though it's a Wednesday tonight, but I'm trying to get back to Thursdays where possible. So the 13th of April, which I think is next Thursday, how to avoid early pitfalls. That's the subject for next Thursday. What's that about? I hear you saying. So basically what we talk about on that one is a few things that you should be looking out for even before you set foot on an airplane to come out here viewing properties. I don't, you know me, I don't really like to talk negative wherever possible, but there are always a few people, companies that may be trading that maybe shouldn't be trading, or doing things they shouldn't be doing. I want to give you a bit of advice on how to easily find these people, easily detect these people, and how to not necessarily avoid, but ask more questions and to really find out who you're actually dealing with. So that's going to be next week. So I'm going to give you a few tips as well about when you come out, the kind of questions you should be asking people, the kind of things that you should be prepared for when you come out here. Certainly not wanting to scare anybody. You know that's not what we do. But yeah, just to give you a little bit of advice on what to do when you come out. So that is next Thursday. The week after, we've got the Grim Reaper himself, Gianluigi, our resident accountant, who's going to be talking about taxes. And I know it's a horrible thing, but we do have to do it. It should have been on the end of last month, but couldn't make it. So I always imagine him a little bit like Scrooge in his office, counting away at the coins and all the rest of it. But he's not really like that. He's one of the nicest guys I know. But he's going to be coming in and telling us all about how to qualify for the 7% flat tax. to come out here to retire. He's also going to be talking about things like if you have a holiday home here, maybe you're renting it out over here, maybe you're moving out here, but you're going to keep a property in the UK. Oh, sorry, not necessarily the UK, your own country. So he's going to cover a number of issues. So that will be on the 20th, and then on the 27th we will have our usual meet the home buyers. So I'm really hoping that a couple that came out with me just last week and on the last minutes of being here in Abruzzo found their perfect place, even though they didn't actually go inside it. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about that as well. And hoping, I've not asked them yet, so if they're watching, I won't mention their names, but they'll know where they are. But hopefully they're going to join us on the 27th for our usual one. As I say, tonight is an open session, so feel free to ask any questions that you like. So what I'm going to do, let me turn off this. This is where Tony gets going now, and he's drinking as well tonight. Tessa from Cold and Rainy, Mississauga. Is that how you say it? Mrs. Anyway, why did Tony puts these up with the long name? I'm sure that's what it does. Hope to see you soon. Hope to see you as well. That's a great name of a town as well. Here's another one. Hello from Villa Vallonga. Is that what it is? Hope I'm right. Yeah, Tony, can you have something like from I don't know, something with 4 words, 4 letters, something like that. Try and help me out a little bit tonight. Okay, here we go again. I know that one. Oh, it's Beth and Joe from Pennsylvania. Can't wait to see them. They're coming out really soon as well. Hopefully they're going to be on the Meet the Home Buyers as well. Okay, perfect. That's getting easy. I know that one. Ruth and Nick. Oh, you're in Scalea. Very nice. Yeah, I went there a while ago. Okay, so before we start, I'm going to go through a few questions. Let me get my chat screen up. What I will say is Tony is the one to blame. Tony, for those of you who say if this is your first time, Tony is the one in the background. Tony is the one that puts the questions through and sometimes makes ridiculous noises of air horns and clapping and things like that. So if you hear anything like that, that's obviously coming from him in the background. But exactly, I thought that's how childish he is, and he's over 60. He's over 60, ladies and gentlemen. He's 60. This is the kind of behaviour we have to put up with. Anyway, so he's going to be the one that's going to be sifting through questions. So make it really hard for him tonight. I really want you to suffer. You can see a few pictures, a few questions coming through. So I am going to mingle a few in with what I've got by email as well. So please feel free to ask away. I will do whatever I can. And Tony, just leave that question. What's that as? Can we be confident that property shown as right? I'll answer that question in a second, Mike. In fact, no, I'll answer it now. We've been looking at properties on your website in preparation to a trip in June. Can we be confident that the properties shown are still available? I can't tell you that, Mike, to be honest with you. What I will say is I'm a little bit behind on my website. We have sold a number of properties that have not made it onto the website. I can't say within June because it is the busiest time at the moment. We're having a crazy March and April, which is fantastic. I can't complain. But what I will say is we have so many properties that are not yet on the site and so many properties that are available to us with people that I work with that don't worry, I will find you something. And sometimes just seeing these places on the web, so many people just think that's the one, that's it for me, that's going to be fantastic. Get there and disappointed. Just come out and don't worry, I'll find you somewhere. Promise you. Promise. Right, okay, so what I was going to say before Tony starts putting questions through, I want to give a little bit of a, if you're thinking of somewhere to go in Italy, maybe for a holiday or something like that, I want to give this place a thumbs up because as people know, I've been to Puglia recently because I'm working with some people down there that are going to be throwing their properties to you guys soon, and one in particular is becoming one of our preferred partners down there in Puglia. And I just want to give a quick, what's the word? Not thumbs up, a quick bit of advertising for Bari, B-A-R-I. Everybody will have seen it. We wanted to go down there, and so we thought we would stay there for a couple of days while we were doing the work that we had to do. And a few people said, "Oh no, don't go there. I've been there. There's not much there. Blah 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 blah." Go! What a fantastic place, in my opinion. If you get the chance to go, I was really, really surprised. I don't know what I was expecting. But what a great place. The tourist board are not paying me, unfortunately. They might do now I've said this, but no, it is a brilliant, brilliant place. So we do often go to Puglia. We like to holiday in Puglia. Still prefer my home region of Abruzzo, obviously, to live, but absolutely love going down there. But Bari was a great place. So if you get the chance to fly into Bari, depending where you're coming from, even if you're coming to Abruzzo, it's a dead easy drive to come up here. But if you get the chance to fly into Bari, or thinking, where can I fly into to go to? Give it a chance. If you're not coming into Pescara, maybe rather than going into Rome, it's similar distances, or Naples, or wherever. If you are coming to mid-Italy, Abruzzo, obviously, come and see us, then I would say have a look at Bari, because what a great place. Really, really enjoyed it. Real Italy. You know, when you get all these programs and they say, we're going to show you off the beaten track. And by the way, I know Tony's getting stressed out now because these questions are coming up and he's losing track of them all. That's why I'm rabbiting on a little bit more than usual. But when you get these programs about off the beaten track Italy, and you see them on the TV all over the world, and they say off the beaten track, and then they show you Venice or they show you Rome. They're all great places. But why can't somebody show us real off the beaten track, whatever you want to say? And I would say Bari is one of those places. Really impressed, really enjoyed it. So that's a little plug for there. Thank you. Anyway, Michaela saying Puglia is one of the most beautiful areas in Italy. I will agree. I will agree with that. I'm definitely going to put Abruzzo at number one, obviously, purely because I love the countryside and everything in Abruzzo. But Puglia has some fantastic towns. But yeah, outside of my favourite, forgetting about Abruzzo and thinking about everywhere else, I would definitely put it up there. Definitely. There you go. Anyway, so hope that's enough for the Pugliese Tourist Board to kindly sponsor. Anyway, moving on. Questions, folks. Tony, you can start bringing the questions on whenever you like. Okay, here we go. So try and catch me out tonight, folks, if you can. Regarding apartments, who is responsible for outside facade, roof, common spaces, etc.? Okay, so everybody who is under the roof. Sometimes there will be, if it's a smaller apartment block, so let's say it's an apartment in a historical centre, maybe there's only, I don't know, half a dozen apartments, things like that, then there's not necessarily what they call a condominium, which is I think just call it a condo, don't you? A condominium, something like that in English, which is a separate a company that is that looks after the building, and you will pay so much per month to look after things like lighting on the stairs, cleaning, all that kind of thing, general maintenance. It also goes towards repairs. So when you're looking for properties with agents or anybody else, ask if there is a condominium. If there isn't, so if it's a historical building, small amount of property, a small amount of apartments in there's a good chance there won't be, then usually the people that live there put together for the lights on the stairs, which is usually very little, and the maintenance of the building is left to the people that live under the roof. So it only takes one person really to go to a geometer, or if they see something that, I don't know, let's say the roof is leaking, then you would go to a geometer. The geometer would, you'd obviously let everybody know that you're doing that. The geometer will create a design, a plan, and say, well, this work needs to be done because it's letting watering or it's doing X, Y, Z. And then the costs get split between everybody. People under the roof usually pay a little bit more, but then it's divided on square meters and that kind of thing. But check if there is a condominium, because it is an important one. If there is a condominium charge, obviously you need to know what that is, what that includes, and some of the money will go to repairs at a later stage. And when these repairs need doing, then they must be done. It's not something you can't just say, well, no, I'm not paying. It's part of your responsibility to pay that. Okay, so, sorry, Tony, I missed that one just before. There was one question just before. Did you... okay, I'll answer this one. I'll let you find that one again. So, Michaela, hello, Dave. Is it true that for people from the EU can buy a house in Italy? You should say a home in Italy. Come on, Michaela. And stay as long as they want. Only people with overseas must apply for a permesso di soggiorno. So, yeah, if you are in the EU, and remember that doesn't include the UK anymore since the B word. I'm not going to mention that. So, yes, if you're in the EU, then... You see, this is a tough one. Technically, can you stay as long as you want? Yes, but technically, not just in Italy, but also in your own country as well, wherever you are, if you stay for 6 months and 1 day, then technically you should be classed as a resident of the country that you're in. And technically, potentially pay taxes. So does anybody know if you're in the EU? Nobody stamps you in and nobody stamps you out. So, you know, but there is a technically part to that. But yes, in theory, you don't have to get your permesso di soggiorno, that kind of thing. But anybody outside of the EU, including the UK, then yes, you do have to apply for a permesso di soggiorno. You can only stay, I think it's 90 days in every 180 days. Okay, next question. Tony Manette. Oh, that's Tony. Hopefully Manette's going to be on our Meet the Home Buyers as well. So great to hear from you. Okay, without hurting anyone's feelings. What's he going to say? What have I done? What list of towns offer homes that might not require over-the-top renovations? Okay, what list of towns offer homes that might... I wouldn't say there is a list of towns really that does that, because it's not every town. Well, most towns have the historical centres and the new parts. So all I would say is just look at look at any town that you like, but just stay away from the historical centre unless it's one that's been completely restored. I think it's a tough one to say for towns. I think it's just more about the build, when things were built and things like that. So stay away from historical centres, I would say, unless it's already been restored. Having said all that, for people that do want to be in the historical centre, it's great fun doing restorations as well. Okay, so let me just, for some reason, okay, oh no, this is an anonymous person. Do agents from one estate agency show homes listed by other agencies or only their own? Do they show private listings? No, they don't. Unfortunately, I personally think we tried setting up a Home in Italy, our business, to be a little bit more like the system in the US, because I think it's a fantastic system over there. But unfortunately, in Italy and many other European countries, it's not like that. Estate agents have their own houses. Some will work together, but finding the ones that do is not so easy, because somebody has to give up a commission. Some people don't mind working with others. Some just refuse point blank. So usually, unfortunately, you have to look through the properties that you like and contact each individual estate agency. Having said all of that, please take my advice that I've said loads of times, and I will be going through it again next week as well. Don't just pick a list of 20 properties and meeting 10 agents and flying all over the place while you go into any area of Italy, because personally, I think you're wasting your time. I really do, because choosing stuff off the internet is not always the best way. Contact the agents. See what kind of feel you get from them. If there's something that you really, really want to see, then yes, try to work with that person. If not, I would say go and see the areas. Do a minimum amount of property viewing. It sounds stupid, but you will find your property. Believe me. Sometimes people will just come and see half a dozen properties and they'll find the one. But yes, in answer to your questions, they don't usually show others. They won't show private listings. We list private listings because I know there's a huge amount of properties out there where the owners do not want to list with an estate agent because they don't want to pay the minimum of potentially nearly 4K. So that's why our website is mainly private listings. But if you go to an estate agent, they will not show you private listings, because the person who they then show, whose property they show, could potentially have to pay them X amount of thousands, and that's why they keep it private. They don't want to do that. So unfortunately, it is a little bit tough, but that is just the way it is. Okay, Angela, if you offer your first price to a seller, is it already binding if the seller accepts it, or does it have to be fixed in writing afterwards? It has to be fixed in writing. Just a vocal offer is no good. I know it used to be a little bit like that in the UK, where people would sort of bring it. Now there's that much gazumping, as they call it there. But no, here it's all about a proposta di acquisto, a proposal to buy. I want to buy your property. I will give you X amount. Here is a proposal in writing, and here is a deposit, because it's a legally binding contract. Here is a deposit to take that off the market. That's how it works here. If you want to know more about that, if you go onto our YouTube channel, we did, under the live section, we did a live stream on this a few weeks ago, and it's called, if I remember, it's called Legal Contracts and What They Mean to You, or something like that. You'll find out about them in that section. But yes, it does need to be in writing. But does Bari have problem with water? No idea. That one you stumped me. I don't know. I didn't have a problem with water anyway. Not while I was there. But maybe in the winter months, in the summer months, possibly. But probably I can't imagine it being any different to any other city. But I don't know. Are you only working with agencies or also with private sellers? With both private sellers and agencies. Okay, Tony. I'm just going to ask a couple of these. Let me just pick one from Mark P. Can you build a swimming pool if you have land? Not necessarily is the answer to that one, Mark. You do have to be careful. Lots of people will, when they come out viewing properties, and agents will say, you've got a nice garden here to put a swimming pool. Nobody should be saying that unless they know for certain that the first of all, the council and the region will allow it, because some regions actually stopped it. I remember Puglia stopping it for a while. I'm not saying it is stopped now, but a number of years ago, they did actually put a halt on people putting in swimming pools. But you need to check with the local council. But more importantly, you need to check with the land where you are to see whether or not you're allowed to have one. And some people say, well, I'll just put an above ground one. Technically, sometimes that's not even allowed. Lots of people do. But you need to see what zone you're in. Purely because if you're in a zone that is prone to slippage, what they don't want is for a huge amount of water. Let's say you had a crack in your swimming pool, something happened, it moved, all the water came out of it. With how much water a swimming pool can hold, it can then have a knock-on effect on the land and the local area. So you do need to check. Don't just presume. So when anybody says to you, nice garden to put a swimming pool, take it with a pinch of salt. Are there ways around it? Yes, they are. Are they always the legal, correct way around it? No, they're not. Lots of people will do it and don't really care. But you need to be wary of something like that. It's always worth asking the question, especially if it's something that's a deal breaker for you, then you must just don't presume. You need to know for definite that you can definitely have a swimming pool in there. It may take a little bit of digging around from whoever's helping you. But you know, really, if it's a deal breaker, then you definitely need to know. Don't just presume it. Okay, Tony, have you got any to put through? Okay, so Omar is saying, cheers, Dave. How could what can I do to know what listings on your website are still active? Omar, I promise, I should stop saying this, shouldn't I? Even though Tony said he'll help me and he's done absolutely nothing since the day he said that. But I will aim to get the website. Sorry for the sound effects. Aim to get the website updated over this Easter break. That's my intention, between the Easter break and next weekend. So that I will aim to do that. But if there are any specific properties, then obviously you can send me an email and I will answer that. Manette's put Palombar on a little dancing bit because Manette has chosen our town. So she's made a huge decision and a fantastic decision as well. Okay, so Tom. Hi, Tom from Canada. How are you doing? Thanks for your continuous work on the Home in Interact. You're awesome. That's very kind of you, Tom. And I just wish I could help more with your situation. But yes, I'll be in touch extremely soon. Okay, so let's get. Here we go. What's this one? Facebook user. Have the bonus schemes all finished? We really wanted the solar bonus. Now there's lots of bonus schemes still around, but the one that everybody seems to talk about is the 110, the 110. Which that is gradually phasing out and is going to be replaced by something that's going to be around 90% or something like that. But it's not necessarily the easiest thing to do. It's been a fantastic thing that they've done. For those who don't know, the 110 is basically the government, when the Italian government, like all other European countries, signed up to the Paris Agreement, whatever it was, about bringing net emissions down and all this sort of stuff. I sound like I know what I'm talking about, but I'm just remembering certain words. Then Italy decided, in their wisdom, and it was a great decision actually by the government during COVID times, that they wanted to get the building industry really moving, because obviously they knew there was going to be a hit with work and things like that. So they created the 110 scheme, and what that means is that if you would basically call a company up, they would come out to your house to see how they could make your house go up 2 letters on the energy certificate. So if your house was rated at a G, they wanted to see how they could bring you up to at least an E. And they would come out and say, okay, in this house, they would check your documents to make sure that the house is legal and all the rest of it. And they said, if we put insulation in the roof, sometimes change the roof, put solar panels on, put what they call a capot, which is actually means a coat, but it's the outside insulation on the house. Change the windows, change the boilers, so on and so on and so on. They do a calculation and say we could get you up to a D, so you would be eligible for that scheme. It was for Italian taxpayers. There was talk that it was also for foreigners, but I've never known anybody get it. But what they then did is, once they'd done the calculations, they would then go through the process, and you would have, they would basically do all the work for you free of charge, and you would actually get an extra 10%, not to put in your pocket, but the 10% would pay for all the technical parts, so all the planning and all that kind of thing. So you'd have a geometer that would do everything. You would be given the right to this 110. You would be given almost like a voucher. You would then take that voucher to a bank, or sometimes companies, but a bank would then say, okay, we will buy that voucher from you, because that's money coming from the government, guaranteed, so to speak, and they would fund it, and you wouldn't pay a thing. And that was a great system. Lots and lots of people sort of joined on the bandwagon. It was slow to start, because in Italy, Italians think nothing comes free. So, but once people started doing it, the builders were just unbelievably busy, because they were doing huge apartment blocks where everybody was getting new boilers, new windows, new everything, lots of money flying around. It's had a little bit of a negative effect, in the sense of now trying to get a builder is really difficult, because all the builders were busy doing that. Obviously, everybody was bumping prices up, because if somebody else is paying, the government's paying, they're thinking, okay, well, we may have to wait for our money, this may happen. So it actually increased a lot of the prices on works, unfortunately. Then as time's gone on, there's a number of building companies that were doing it that are now saying, you know what, we're not interested in that, it's too much hassle, we're having to wait too long for our money, blah, 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 blah. Unfortunately, prices have stayed high. That has been not the only factor. Obviously, the world, everything else, the madness of the world of today is increasing things. But lots of builders now have stopped doing these things. But the government is changing. I think the deadline for the 110 is pretty much gone. There's something else that's going to replace it. But the schemes that are great, that are open to the vast majority of us, are the bonuses, where you'll get between 50 and 65% off anything that will help to make you more energy efficient. So if you were getting new windows, there'll be so many window companies that will offer the scheme. Not everybody does it, because they do have to wait a bit of time to get the money from the government, or it's taken from taxes, and people don't like that. So not all companies will do it, but look for those that advertise to do the 50%. And there's lots of people, and there's people doing the solar stuff as well. But it's great. It's worth having a shop around. We bought recently a new stufa for a heating system that does pellets, wood, and olive nuts, because pellets increased unbelievably in price, whereas olive nuts stayed really, really low. So we bought a new system, and we got it on the 50%. They took it off. Some companies, you have to pay it, and then you have to get it back either through taxes, or you get it back in different ways. Whereas there's some companies that say, no, we will take it straight off, and they sort of fund it, if you like. It's usually the bigger companies that do that. But we paid half. It's never half. It's always half of the maximum price. So I think our stufa should have been 8.5 grand. If you bought it in the shops, then it would have been sort of 5.5. But we obviously got it half price from the 8.5. So it is, you do still save. You don't really save 50%, but it still is a good saving. But there's lots of businesses doing it. You just have to search through the ones that are, and also speak to the ones that are not doing it, because some of them may do some really good deals, and you may end up being just about the same anyway. So it's the great things, these bonuses, but just don't get it into your head that it's, you've seen something online that's 1,000, you're going to get that for 500, because it doesn't quite work like that. You may have seen it online for 1,000, but the actual RRP on it may be 1,500, and then you'll get half from that. You're still saving money, but it's not It's not as clean cut as that. God, that was a long answer. I forgot the question. Okay, so this one now. Do you worry that in selling to so many non-Italians that some of the Italian charm will be lost? Not at all. The reason why I say not at all is obviously there's far more Italians. Italians, as far as numbers are concerned, against foreign people living here, there's just the percentage is ridiculously low. The other thing what I will say is the Italian culture, everything to do with Italians is their beliefs, their culture is so strong that even the kids carry it on. So I think in some countries where potentially even some of the locals have forgot how to be Italian or how to be Spanish or how to be English or wherever it is that they're from, I think Italy for me is a place where the passion of Italy and the passion of Italians is really, really strong. And I just can't see how anybody could take that away from them. And I mean, yes, we sell, or we're involved in a number of property transactions, but when you compare it to percentages, it's nowhere near. So now I believe that the Italian culture is far too strong for anybody to try and sort of change that. So no, I wouldn't worry about that. If you're thinking maybe Italy's turning into little, I want to say Little Britain, but little wherever, then no, for me, it's nothing like that at all. Okay, so another Facebook user, is there really a bonus for Italian citizens returning to live full-time in Italy? Yes. It's not necessarily a bonus in terms of where they're paying you to sort of come back. What they're doing is, if you've not been resident of Italy, so let's say you've lived outside, you're Italian citizen, you've moved away, and you've not come back, you've not been back for more than a year, you can apply for the 7% tax rate just as any other person from the outside can. And the 7%, which Gianluigi, our resident accountant, will be talking about, things like that. Basically, you'll pay 7% on your worldwide income for about, I think it's 10 years, up to 10 years. After that 10 years, then obviously things change. But once you round it off over a period of 20 or 30 years, it's a great scheme. And it doesn't matter how much money you earn, you have this 7% tax rate, and that is being offered to Italian citizens to get people back. Yeah, so there are incentives. It's not necessarily a bonus payment, but it is a tax incentive. Okay, another Facebook user, working on getting my citizenship. What are some info I should look for when purchasing a home? Okay, so having citizenship, good question, because this one, there's a lot of people that don't quite get this one. Being an Italian citizen or not being an Italian citizen has no relevance when it comes to buying properties. So some people think if they're a citizen, you pay less tax. That's not true. If you're becoming a resident, then you pay less tax. If you're an Italian citizen, you pay exactly the same tax as Johnny Foreigner. So it's only when you become resident. So what do I mean by that? Let's give you an example of an Italian person living in I was going to say Canada, but unfortunately Canadians can't buy properties at the moment in Italy unless they have an Italian background. But let's say you're an Italian living in Canada and you want to buy a property in Italy, and you're an Italian citizenship, you've got a passport, you've got everything else, and you're buying that property as a holiday home. You're buying it as a second property. You're not moving here. You just want to buy something back in your own country, just to have a foothold there. You will pay exactly the same tax, which obviously taxes are quite complicated, but when it comes to tax on properties, there's two schemes. You pay 9% and you pay 2%. That's based on, this is a one-off tax that you pay at the time that you buy your property, based on what we call the catastale value of the property, which can be much less than the price of the property. So let's say Mr. Italian or Mrs. Italian, living wherever in the world, want to buy a property here. It's going to cost 100K. It has a taxable value of 50K. They would have to, if you're buying it as a second home, you would still pay the 9%, just exactly the same as if Mr. British man wants to buy a property in Italy as a holiday home. They will pay 9%. So citizenship has no relevance whatsoever. But if Mr. British man or Mr. whoever or Mrs. whoever say, I'm going to become a resident within 18 months, then that's where the difference is. You then pay 2% and of the taxable value, and you must become resident within 18 months. So as I said, citizenship has got nothing to do with it. It's all about residency. And lots of people, I'm pleased you asked this question, because lots of people say, I'm waiting for my passport. I've heard it's better or easier. It's not better. The only time it's not necessarily easier but beneficial is if you live in a country where you can't buy a property in Italy at the moment. And some of the most popular places that can't buy unless they're moving out here is Australia, New Zealand, and Canada. Canada's been added to that list for the next 2 years, purely because Italy works on reciprocal agreements, and governments in those countries have said that Italians can't buy unless they become residents, and so on and so on. So if you are living in one of those countries, but you have an Italian or an EU passport, then that is where that comes in handy. If you can just, Tony, if you can just hold that question, because this one comes into the last one I've just answered. So Paul and Diane asked a similar question. How long do I have to become resident if I buy using the lower tax rate? And what happens if I do not do it in time? Okay, so this ties on to the last one that I've just answered. So if you do buy property and you take advantage of the 2% tax rate when you buy, because you say, I'm going to become a resident, the notary, it's not for them to keep an eye on you to make sure you do it. It's for them to warn you what happens. So basically, if you say, yes, I'm going to become a resident of Italy within 18 months, I would like to buy this property with a lower tax scheme, the notary will accept that with no problem at all. You don't have to show proof you're going to move. What the notary will say is he will warn, or she will warn you, that you have 18 months to do that. So 18 months from the time of buying your property to become a resident. Nothing to do with citizenship. You don't have to be a citizen. You have to be a resident. So you have to sort out a visa, your permission to stay, and everything else to get done within 18 months. If 18 months is coming up and you've not managed to do it, or let's say plans have changed and you thought, no, I can't do it now within 18 months, it's worthwhile contacting the tax office, because if you contact them and say, look, my 18 months is a month away, I've not managed to become resident, this is my reason, you stand more chance of maybe not getting a fine. Not saying that's guaranteed, because what usually happens is you have to pay the difference between the 2% and the 9% on the taxable value, remember, not on what you paid for it. So you pay that 7% difference, and then you'll pay a percentage fine of that difference, which I believe can be about 30%, if I remember rightly, with the notaries. So let's say if a taxable value was 50k on a property, you should have paid 4,500 in tax. But let's say you pay the 2%, so you only paid 1,000. So you pay the 3,500 plus, I'm sure it's somewhere around about 30% on top of that as well. But if you go to the tax office and say, look, hands up, I've not done this, it puts you in a better chance of possibly doing something with the fine. If you don't say anything, then the tax office will catch up with you. Will send you a letter and say, you said you were going to become resident, you've not done. This is the tax, the unpaid taxes, and here's your fine as well on top. Okay, Tony, do you want to put the next one through? He's gone quiet on me now. Here we go. So Joy is saying, hi Dave, do you offer assistance in finding property in Le Marche, and how do we go about enlisting your help? Le Marche is an area that I am currently meeting with a couple of people. It does take me a while for me to get to meet people who I really feel that I can work properly with. And there's a contact who I am currently working with another client. So at the moment, I'm going to say I can't help you. I'd rather you come further south and come to Abruzzo, obviously. But it will be on the horizon soon. Having said all of that, if you do find something and you are working with another estate agent or whoever it is who you're working with, but you feel that you just need some extra assistance, that's a big part of our job, where people say, look, we found this, but we want you to be power of attorney because we can't get back. We want you to help assist us through everything and go through the documents, make sure we're all right. Maybe they don't speak good English and that kind of thing. That is a huge part of our job. We get sent all over Italy to do things like that. So there's always something we can help you with. But when it comes to property viewing at the minute, it's Abruzzo and Puglia at the moment. Okay. You got any more, Tony, or shall I? Okay. Facebook user, what are the average mortgage rates and terms for a dual citizen looking to buy in Italy? Mortgages are a nightmare at the minute. I mean, the rates you can look on the internet. There's obviously lots of different variable rates. You can look, any of the Italian bank websites. You can see them all. It's just so difficult getting them unless you're here and earning money here and you've got assets and everything else here. We used to, in the 18 years I've been doing this, I think I've been involved in maybe 4 or 5 mortgages. Each one was an absolute nightmare. And in the last, certainly since previous to COVID, getting them has been, I used to have a friend that worked, that was his business doing them, and he's actually stuck, well, he's still doing it, but he's having to charge people an awful lot before he even starts because there's so much paperwork involved. And he said getting them has just been an absolute nightmare. So unfortunately, I can't see the name of the person, it just says Facebook user. Have a look on the, obviously look at some of the websites, look at, I don't know, you can look at some local banks even just to get an idea. Even people like, I don't know, local to here, Beeper, so the letter B-P-E-R. You could go on their websites and have a look, and Banca Intesa, places like that. But very, very difficult unless you're working here and have some sort of presence here. It really is difficult, unfortunately. Okay. For US citizens, my wife and I have looked at buying a home in several countries, France, Italy, etc. How long can we stay in the EU in general per stay? So it's 90 days in every 180. You can actually get an app for your, because I make it sound easy saying that, 90 days in one, but there's so many, you know, if you leave the Schengen zone and you go to a country that's not part of Schengen, then you're allowed to stay there and you can come back. It's a really weird way how they count this 90 days. What I would suggest is there is an app. I don't know what the app is. I haven't put it on my telephone, but a few people have told me that there's an app on the on mobile phone app that basically you say, okay, I'm going to Italy for this long, and then I'm thinking about going to France and this long, and it will calculate and tell you how long. But the general rule of thumb is 90 in every 180. So the idea is that you stay just under the half of the year, if you like, because if you go over half a year, potentially you could have tax implications. So it's 19 180. Okay, let's see if I've got some questions here. Okay, Aaron has asked me, sorry, let me just, do you want to put that one back on, Tony, that question, because I think that's another one to do with the 180 days. Hi, David, if I'm only able to stay for 90 days within 180-day period, are there property managers available who can look after the property for security, etc.? Depends where you're buying, John. There'll always be property managers. In some of the more established areas, you know, Tuscany's and places like that, it's a weird one with property management because it should be a big business, really. And it's a lot of the property management companies I've seen throughout Italy tend to be expats, such as myself, that maybe set up businesses doing it, because it doesn't seem to be much of an Italian thing. Maybe it's because it's quite difficult to manage if you've got properties all over the countryside and all that kind of thing that you have to manage. I always say to people buying properties, especially in places like where I work, I always try and find somebody local, because one, it will cost you much less. Two, you get so much more sort of by giving a local person some work, then you get so much more from that person, in the sense of they tend to take care of it a little bit more. They live locally, they're in the town. I don't know, let's say somebody walks by your house and they see a window's opened and smashed, and you know, it's all about being sort of on the ground and local. And you'll find in a lot of the smaller towns and villages, people will really look after things. And I always say, try and get somebody local. There will always be somebody local that will want that kind of work. But yeah, there are property managers around, but it's not a huge thing. But we always help people when they bought properties, and just a few questions asking around in the local bar, you'll usually find somebody that will do that kind of work. So yeah, it's not so easy to find in some of the bigger places and the more established places. You may well find some sort of expat property managers, but I would say local. It always works better local. Okay, Aaron has asked a question on emails, and I'll touch a little bit on this one because it is a subject that I want to cover on another live stream at some point. And he's saying, can I leave my property to who I want when I die? It's actually a good question, that one, because it's not quite as simple as that when it comes to properties here in Italy. There's a whole automatic sequence, if you like, that happens, that kicks in. So if you, for instance, in our case, so myself and my wife and I have 2 children, ours is quite straightforward because if anything happens to me or my wife or both of us, it just goes straight to the kids. If anything happens to me, then my part is so my 50% share is shared between my wife and my kids. So my part would go half to my wife, and the other half would then be split between my kids. You can't actually, in Italy, you can't write your kids out of your will. You can't say my kids are doing my head in, so I'm going to leave it all to the cat's home just to teach them a lesson. It doesn't work like that in Italy, because Italian law states basically they're your kids, your responsibility. You can't just sort of leave them with nothing. So if you're in a situation where this can get really tricky, and this is one that you really must think about, because there's lots of people that will buy properties, not just in Italy, I should imagine all over the world. You should check in any country that you're buying from. That if you're buying as, let's say, you've come out of a marriage and you may still have children within that marriage, and you've married somebody else and you come out to Italy and you thought, we're going to move away from everything and start a new life. You do need to check, because if anything happens to you, then obviously you have a new wife or a new husband, where part of your property will go to them, but part will also go to the kids, because that is automatic here in Italy. So, and if you're saying, well, but I don't want my kids to do that, there's several ways around it. You can write a will yourself, a handwritten will. You do not do it on a computer. It must be handwritten, and where you can put your requests in there and say, this is what I want to do. What's important here is to find out whether the country where you are has a reciprocal agreement with Italy to say that, where you can basically say that I would like my will to be looked after under British law, for instance, if it was me. I know at the time that you could do that as a British citizen. I could have, I don't know if it's still the same now after Brexit, I think it is. But as a British citizen, I could have said, look, I want it dealing with under the UK law, where I can do what I want with my property. But that's not to say that my kids, who are obviously Italian citizens, couldn't contest it, because they can. The strange thing is, if you have no children, then it can get passed to all sorts of weird and wonderful sort of parts of your family. So if you've come out here with your new partner, looking for a new life and everything else, and let's say your new partner didn't have any children, you didn't have any children, doesn't necessarily mean that if anything happens to you, that it will automatically go to wherever. It can be contested. It can go to brothers and sisters and all sorts of things. I don't want to scare anybody, because it's a big subject. It's easy to sort out, but I would strongly suggest that once you've got your property, then a simple handwritten will that can be left with somebody that you trust and published at a later stage, and find out if there are reciprocal agreements, if you do want it to be dealt with under the law of where you are. But if you come in here as an Italian citizen, and you are an Italian citizen, then you'll be, that can change, because it can mean that it doesn't necessarily, the money, you can't give all your property away. You can only give a very small percentage of the property away. So if one of your kids, you're just thinking, you know what, you've done my head in for the last however many years, you're getting nothing off me. It doesn't work like that. So it's worth having a conversation with the person that you're buying through, and making sure things like this are done and sorted out before, God forbid, anything happens. Okay, so we've got 10 minutes, Tone. Have you got any more questions come through? So here we go. This has come from, I don't know why I have to keep pressing this button to see who it is. Come from TK. Hello, David. As a EU passport holder, do I need to apply for a Codice Fiscale? Do I need anything else except money and a bank account to purchase property in Italy? Yes, everybody must have a Codice Fiscale. A Codice Fiscale is a tax code. It doesn't matter where you're from. Italians automatically get one when they're born. But if you do not have a Codice Fiscale, you must have one of those before you can do anything, or many things here in Italy. Dead easy to get. When people use our services, we can obviously help people get that. But what I would suggest, and I do suggest to anybody that's interested in buying a property in Italy, you may as well get your Codice Fiscale now, because it doesn't mean that you start paying taxes now. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden it's just it's a way of identifying you. So what I would suggest is, if you're considering buying a property, even if you don't buy one in the end, it doesn't matter. Go onto your Italian consulate webpage, and there's usually a search box or something like that, and just type Codice Fiscale in there. So Tony will probably write it on the. Can you write it on there, Tony, on the live stream, just so people can read that? But Codice Fiscale, it's called. So you can, and just there'll be a section where you can apply. You can apply online. And usually some people have had them back within a week. So you may as well apply for it now, even if you're not thinking about buying it for another year or however long. If you're going to buy in the next month or so, then maybe it's better just waiting and the person that's helping you out will do that. But not all agents do that. That's not their responsibility to do that. Part of our services, we do that for you. But I would say to anybody, just go on to the, let's say the consulate, wherever you are, your local consulate. Find the section for the Codice Fiscale and apply. It's usually asks for name, address, and some sort of proof of maybe a passport and a driving license, something like that. And you should get a card or a piece of paper back at anything from a week to 2 months. It's just one step further along. You don't have to, but I would suggest doing that. Okay, anybody else got any questions? And I will go to, how long does it normally take to get residency? Depends where you're coming from. As an EU, somebody coming from the EU, it's fairly quick. I mean, last week when we had Meet the Home Buyers, that took them, once they actually bought their house, I think they got residency within a couple of weeks. That's quite easy as an EU citizen, because it's all done at local level. If you have to, let's say you're coming from the States or somewhere else and you've got your visa, then it can take a little bit longer. My wife looks after all things like this, so it is usually, I would say, you can usually get it within sort of 6 months, something like that, because once you've got, what it is you need your permission to stay. So you get a visa where you're allowed to go to the country and stay over the 90 days. From there, you need the permission to stay. It's that takes a little bit longer. The actual getting the residency is fairly quick, because that's done with the local council. So I would say you've got to allow a good 6 months if you've got somebody helping you that knows what they're doing, basically. But yeah, there's a few different processes to go through. I've known some people that it's taken over a year to do that, purely because they probably wasted the first few months trying to do things themselves and just running around in circles. But yeah, I would say to allow around about 6 months for something like that. Unless, as I say, you're in the EU, then it should be a bit of paperwork at the local council. If you say a month, I would think that's too much. But yeah, maybe say a month just in case. Michaela, if a property, I hope it's Michaela. For some reason, I can't see names. If a property has a lot of land, for example, 10,000 square meters, is the taxation higher versus a simple garden? No, land is if it's a simple garden, it depends how. When you buy a property, when you collect the land, the map of the land and where the house is positioned and that kind of thing, if it's just a small garden, there's a good chance that it will have the same plot number as the house. If it has the same plot number as the house, because every house is allowed to have what they call a corte, which is almost like a courtyard. That courtyard can be up to so many thousand square meters. So you will have one plot number for the house and the land around it. The land around that, if it's on the same plot number, is not taxed. It's taxed as it's part of the house, if you like. If you have 10,000 square or it's different plot numbers. It doesn't really matter how much land you have. It's just you obviously pay more tax. You still pay the 15% if it's agricultural tax, 9% if it's building land, but it's based on the square, how many square meters you have and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's not that the tax is higher. It's just obviously you've got more of it, so you're multiplying it by a lot more. But if it's a simple garden, or sometimes even quite a big garden, it all depends if it's on the same plot number as the house. But the taxable values of land is not very high if it's agricultural. If it's building land, it can be very high. It can be anything from 40, 50 euros a square meter upwards if it's buildable. Tracy is saying, asking if purchasing arable land that includes house or a home with a few hectares of gardens, how easy to use some of this for glamping? A few people want to do this, Tracy. It's a tough one because glamping they have a wooden base. They have something that's it all has to be done at council level, because the problem with glamping is tents are one thing. Glamping tend to have some sort of wood structure, almost a permanent wood structure, and they usually have sort of a permanent bathroom or something like that, and that's taking up volume of habitable space, if you like. It depends the type of land, what's allowed on your land, and every single council has different variations, because when you sell a property, you get an urban certificate that tells you what can and can't be done on that particular plot of land, but that varies from council to council. So it's really, really difficult to say yes you can. And this is where people can fall into lots of problems, because they can say, some person on social media can say, well, I did it with no problem. But it doesn't always work like that. You need to ask at a local level. So I can't really answer that properly, not because I don't know, but I just can't. Well, no, I don't know. I just can't give you the full. Obviously, I don't know every council in it, but just don't take it for granted that you can just because you've got loads of land, because you really need to see how the council will treat that. Okay, Tony, I think we've got time for another one or maybe two if we're quick, because I don't like to keep these lovely people. Even though we've got a great number in tonight, thank you very much for the support. Let's get another couple in, and then we will say goodbye. So Neil, Codice Fiscale, can you go into the local government office in Italy with proof of ID and get one, or do you need evidence that you are buying a property? No, you don't need evidence that you're buying a property. If you're here in Italy, you can make an appointment at the Agenzia dell'Entrata, which you can do online. It's quite easy to make a booking. You go onto their website, and it will say, obviously translate it to English if you don't read Italian, and you can book. You can go in with your documents, so you need proof. You have to fill out a form as well. It'll give you the form online. You download that, fill that out, go in there with passports and that kind of thing, usually 2 lots of ID, and they will sort it out at the Agenzia dell'Entrata. You can't just go to a council. Councils don't do anything like that at all. It has to be the Agenzia dell'Entrata. The easiest way is to do it online with your local consulate office, wherever that may be. That's definitely easy, but you don't need proof that you're buying a property. Okay, so we've got another question here. Hello, trying to schedule a meetup with you when we are in your area from June 22nd to the 30th. So yeah, if you send me an email, I'm about 3 days behind on emails. I've been down in Puglia, but if you send me an email, it will be an absolute pleasure to help you. Okay, Tone, is there one more, or is that? Or somebody's saying, Graham is saying the app is the Schengen 90. So yeah, leave that on screen for a second, so people take notes. Thank you very much, Graham, for telling us that. That's the name of the app that you can put on your telephone to find out how long you can stay in Italy if you're coming from outside of the EU, because there's a way of calculating. It's really weird how it can't just be simple. It has to be something complicated. But that app is really good, so I've been told. Okay, look at that, bang on the hour, and nobody's caught me out tonight. I don't think nobody managed it, but there you go. Okay, so thank you once again for your great support this evening. We've got a great amount of you in. Really hope that you're enjoying all of these. Remember that next week we are talking about the subject which I've completely forgot about, which is how to avoid early pitfalls. It is a good one, that. As I say, I don't usually like to talk negative, but there's a number of things that you should know and must know before you even set foot on an airplane. So it's just a way of giving you a few tips, things to look out for, not necessarily scams to look out for, because it's not really like that, but you need to be aware of a few things before you come out here, and it's and that's what these things are. These streaming sessions are all about, being prepared for everything. As I say, you're not going to get any negative things, because I want everybody to come out and buy. It's a great system. It's almost a flawless system, believe it or not. But there's things that you should know about. So that's the idea of these weekly sessions. Okay, guys, thank you so much for your support. I really look forward to speaking to you again next Thursday, and have a fantastic Easter, everybody. Have a rest, get on the internet, start dreaming about Italy, and hopefully we'll meet lots of you out here really soon. Thank you so much for your support. Keep an eye out on YouTube as well. We've got some new property videos going on there as well. Some great stuff coming up. Thank you so much. See you soon.